There are places one keeps to oneself, quiet, tranquil, and almost undisturbed. There are places one simply doesn't share, because they are the homes of wildlife, of flora and fauna almost undisturbed, and they need their secrets, just as we. Sometimes I visit these places, going softly, making as little impression as possible, leaving no wake and no trail, only to share in the treasure of the sacred silences of those places. And I never fail to find that if one is still and quiet, always, they open up and share. Sometimes the gift of these secret places may be as simple as the sight of a beaver enjoying a bullhead lily rhizome floating on his back. And sometimes, if you are still and patient, something particularly special arrives. Such as this female common merganser who put in a dramatic entrance at the first point west. Hours I waited still and motionless, veiled in the partial shadow of clouds and trees, before my aquatic guest arrived. Then I enjoyed the presence of another very special visitor, an American kestrel alighting in a treetop just to my left. I find it strange how days in the woods can be like this, so still, seeming that nothing's going to happen, and then suddenly so much can happen at once, for a school of trout in the still cove to the north of me decided to rise just then, creating whimsical ripples in charming ever-expanding circles. I've seen so much already upon this very special lake, and yet it's not even the reason that I'm here. I have come in fact to see a rare and very unusual plant, a carnivorous plant, a flesh-eating plant, something few folk have ever seen for themselves. Something so strange few have ever seen it in the wild, and yet I know a secret place where thousands grow. So I stole a moment to ponder the wildlife I had yet seen. And then I stowed away my gear, put it aboard the canoe, and pushed out over the water. And as I did so, loons took flight, and a pair of eagles seemed to rise from the horizon to say goodbye. But for me, my sights were set on the far side of the coast south, across the stone bed of a remote lake, only now coming back to life. And if I did not capture those loons quite in perfect focus, or a photograph of the eagles is not quite as sharp as I would like it, I ask your tolerance, my viewer. It's not so easy to paddle with one hand and shoot photography with the other. But soon enough my faithful canoe glides into the south cove, surrounded by tall trees and thick wetland brush. Let's take a look at the amazing and seldom seen Insectivorous pitcher plant. I've been foraging for so long, I think my eyes automatically scan for what's out there. For while I'm watching for the pitcher plants, I note a new place where Labrador tea has appeared. It's rare in this part of the highlands, and whenever it turns up I take a special note of it, as it is a pleasant forageable, great for tea and excellent for cooking venison. But there's our quarry, the pitcher plant, this one growing in wet ground, and creating a beautiful reflection in the water. It appears singularly, and as we see here, in well-defined rosettes. In North America, most pitcher plants are members of the genus Sarracenia, and though this plant is uncommon to rare, it is perhaps not all that surprising to find them in large groups, as the Sarracenia reproduce primarily from rhizomes. Sometimes inappropriately called the bog pitcher, the actual name of the Nova Scotia pitcher plant is the purple pitcher plant, or scientifically, Sarracenia Purpurea. During the summer, the pitcher plant produces a darkly hued, almost flesh or blood-colored flower that rises high above it. And it's flexible where it will grow, both on top of boggy ground and down at the edge of the water. As much as I am enjoying visiting this unusual plant, with a peculiarly carnivorous habit, the beaver I cited earlier chewing on that bullhead lily rhizome has me curious. I know bullheads grow thickly on the far side of the lake, and they're of interest to many animals. Often I find the rhizomes floating on the lake and forage them when I do. Beavers cut them loose from the lake bottom, bring many back to their lodges to eat, but many others escape and float away. And those would go to waste anyway, so they become those that I forage. But right there, I can see what I'm looking for, more rhizomes of bullhead lilies. And there, just beyond, is another. The west side of this lake is very different from the east side. The west side is marked by a number of coves that angle off sharply from the main body of the lake and are surrounded by tall trees, creating windless, warm microclimates. Whereas the east side of the lake meets a hillside that rises up over open meadow country, and unsheltered, it is fairly windy on this side of the lake. I'm looking for the source of the bullhead lilies, and there right ahead is another beaver feeding on rhizomes. We're getting close. And look, there's another beaver right there. He's moving toward the middle of shallows. No trees are going to grow there, but all kinds of aquatic plants. And there he dives. It's time for him to forage. He's after lily rhizomes too. At a point along the shore near the edge of the woods, I can see more beavers crossing each other. That point is either near their lodge or a feeding ground. And crossing the beaver's path are a mated pair of common loons. I've put the paddle inside the canoe and I'm letting the wind push me along. Probably the wildlife perceive me as just a log floating on the water and pay me almost no mind at all, getting very close. Here's one intrepid fellow swimming in my direction. I'm not sure if he's coming to check me out and see if perhaps the canoe is a log that he can make use of, or if he's just curious. Beavers are intelligent. In either case, when he gets very close, he simply treats the drifting canoe as if it were a mere obstacle, dives underneath, and comes up the other side and continues on his way. The beavers once had a substantial lodge in a cove on the west side, but they have abandoned it in favor of the east side. Perhaps it was the abundance of the bullhead lilies and nutritious hardwood timber that drew them. But I set aside my quest for the hidden cache of the beavers' bullhead lily rhizomes when I came across a small flock of rusty blackbirds. While this species of blackbird is widespread through North America, their numbers have been in decline for reasons not quite clearly known for quite some time. A beautiful blackbird, their dark feathers present a lovely turquoise iridescence. But most people probably know them by their bright yellow eyes and their unique call. Sadly, this species of blackbird is probably one of the million species being pushed to extinction by man's avaricious use of Earth's resources and wanton destruction of her ecosystems. But while I took a moment to admire the blackbird, I had no idea that its activities would lead me, in fact, to the beaver's cache. The rusty blackbird I was just observing dove down behind that little thicket, and I let the canoe drift with the breeze around to the other side of it. And there it was. This is a beaver's feeding site, a cache where they have collected the rhizomes of the bullhead lily. At other times that I've studied the beavers' activities on this lake, I've found it curious that I haven't seen any white branches or twigs that have been stripped of their outer bark. Wood that the beavers have used for a food source. Now I know why. It appears that on this lake the beavers are making use of the bullhead lilies as a primary food source. I must admit this surprises me somewhat, but why not? It's probably less work than cutting down trees to get at their nutritious but cell-thin layer of cambium beneath the bark. And they can harvest the bullhead lily rhizomes right out of the lake, sparing them the risk of having to go on land to cut down trees where they would be vulnerable to predators. I myself forage the rhizomes when I can get them, and I could certainly understand the beavers' draw to this abundant and nutritious food source. In this clip, shot 2 summers back, I'm paddling through a thicket of them that inhabit the north side of the lake. Having located the bullhead lily rhizome cache in an area of high beaver traffic, Also near a number of trees that the beavers can forage on if they want variety in their diet, I pushed with the oar, allowing the canoe to fall back a bit and get caught in the breeze. And I'm soon rewarded with the sight of a beaver climbing up on the bank, as I thought they might, to conduct terrestrial activities. What a day for wildlife and photography. And I had never known that bullhead lily rhizomes could actually comprise the majority of beaver diets, though perhaps not for all the year, at least not in this area. Maybe I'll investigate that later on. But the storm that has been brewing all day is promising to arrive. I can hear thunder on the horizon, and the clouds, which have been coming and going all through the day, are descending out of the heights. Thunder echoes through the woodlands, and soon I am sure rain will come. It's time to get off the lake. This sequestered lake is a rare treasure, an example of an environment in balance. But such places are becoming rare in the world, and it exists only because it is surrounded by woodlands and highlands that are largely pure and capable of supporting the complex ecosystem that is very much dependent on undisturbed forest and pure waters. Such places are becoming ever more threatened in the world due to predatory forestry practices and the heavy use of chemicals in farming. If the beings that dwell in this place are to persist, if our children are to know such places tomorrow, we must act together to protect them today, so that we can all know the joy of experiencing undisturbed places.